Today I'm going to be giving you a crash course on the gardening niche to teach you a little bit about the industry itself and also to teach you some of my personal recommendations for targeting different sub-niches within this industry. To start out with, I want to talk about the gardening niche in general for just a moment. Every year, there are millions of Americans that are spending totals of billions of dollars on this specific hobby, gardening. This niche is widespread because most households have a gardener in it. However, you have a lot of different kinds of gardening and experience levels of gardening. So as a result, you have a lot of different ways that you can actually go about targeting this industry as an affiliate. Now, your best bet as an affiliate is to go very specific with your sub-niche selection. If possible, even try to go after a particular sub-niche from some kind of a unique angle, but still make sure that unique angle is a topic of current interest to gardeners. The point is, you get specific enough, you get to avoid most of the search engine competition, and then you can simply write content about relational topics and you'll easily get search rankings for them. Now, the really astounding thing about the gardening niche is that you have upwards of 70% or even more of households in the USA doing some type of gardening. On top of that, you also have about 40% or more of the USA households that are actually involved in some kind of food gardening where they're actually trying to grow at least some of their own food. The food growing aspect of it presents even more unique niche targeting opportunities and ways to essentially sell people on the idea of growing their own food, because it's not just a hobby. You get to reap the rewards from your work. You can actually eat the food that you grow, and when you're doing that, you're spending less money on food from the grocery store. So people can actually get a return on their investment when they put money into a garden. The rough estimates of the return on a garden is about 1,000%. If somebody puts $100 into creating a garden, just in that 1 year, they're likely to be able to harvest $1,000 worth of food, and they can actually reduce their food expenditure that way by having a food garden. Now, food gardening has a number of rapidly growing demographics. The 18 to 34 age group, especially males, has jumped up in food gardening over the last 5 years or so as much as 63%. So this is a massive increase in the number of young people that are getting involved in food gardening. Also, areas of food gardening with growing demographics. Households with children up 25% in 5 years. Households in urban areas is up 29% in 5 years. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about these demographics. The demographics can actually be something that you can use for targeting. since there is a very fine line with who is actually doing the gardening. You can use that to your advantage as an affiliate. Even more so if you happen to be paying for advertising, because you can specify things like demographics, male, female, age groups, different areas of the country, things of that nature. Well, the males aged 18 to 34, as I mentioned before, are your most rapidly growing age group, but they're also your biggest spenders in this particular niche. And they recently overtook the previous top spenders, which was considered to be women of all ages and also 55 plus males. A lot of times the males are attributed for making more of the larger purchases, while a lot of the women are going out and doing things like the plant selection and actual putting together of the gardens, while the men do a lot of the big purchases and the machinery and the heavy lifting type of stuff. Now, something that is very noteworthy for affiliates, people that are going to be building affiliate websites, is that this 18 to 34-year-old male group that is the biggest spending group in gardening right now, they are very interested in things like online information, training, workshops, classes having to do with the gardening niche. So if you can train them to do various things and then direct them along to the products to buy, this is going to be your best bet for going after this industry, no matter what sub-niche you decide to try to target in it. Try to center in on the younger male age group. Now, the average consumer is typically buying lower priced items in this niche, which can be a good thing for Amazon affiliates because it can increase your volume sales for every month, which can actually raise your commission rate. However, you do have higher priced products being purchased in this niche, especially when you branch out into other closely relational niches. And when you consider online buying habits are typically more geared towards those higher priced purchases, the things where people want to save money by buying online instead of getting it from their local garden center. These are the types of situations that you can take advantage of as an affiliate in the gardening niche. Now, the young male age group that I was talking about that is spending the most, on average, they're spending about $440 a year on the gardening niche. So they are going to be your best bet for targeting the higher priced products. But again, you definitely have people in specialty types of markets or people that are looking to do certain kinds of things. Maybe they have more land to work with. Maybe they're in a higher income group and want to do a more extensive garden. Maybe they just moved into a new home and they need to landscape the entire place. You know, you have all kinds of different situations where this $440 annual spending limit is not going to apply. Some people go well above and beyond that. And when you can identify those situations and target them appropriately with your website, then you can take a major advantage of them online as an affiliate. Now, when you're doing your targeting, trying to select a sub-niche to go after, never try to target a general niche like food gardening. The competition is going to be overwhelming and nearly impossible for a single person to be able to build a website capable of achieving top 10 search rankings for keyword phrases such as those general search terms. Now, I'll be going into more detail throughout this class about some of these sub-niche possibilities, But here are some ideas to get you started on. And remember, this list still contains general niches. You don't want to just go after something you see on this list here. You want to pick a specific topic within one of these sub-niches for the best results. But you can target things like types of gardens, hardiness zones of plants, purposes of gardens, plant species, and even related construction. Think anything that is built outside around a home, especially things that might be built around a garden. I'll get into more detail about that kind of stuff as this class progresses again. To start out with, I want to talk about types of gardens. When someone searches for gardening information online, they will often have a type of garden in mind that they want to create. So this can be a good approach for niche selection, because this will often be keyword phrases that are actively being searched for online. Now, any of these types of gardens that I have listed here, and even other kinds that I have not listed here, could certainly be broken down into numerous sub-niches, or even combined with other targeting factors that I talk about throughout this training class. Now, I won't sit here and rattle off all of these for you, and there is going to be a PDF guide along with this video training where you can actually download the slideshow from this class, so you can refer back to these lists that I'm going to have for you, because this is not the only one. But the important thing to remember here is that each of these different kinds of gardens is going to have different requirements for it. You're going to have different information that teaches people what they need to do to create these gardens, what they need to do to maintain them, the different supplies they're going to need, the different soil makeup, the different plants that are going to go in them, the different tools they're going to need to be able to work with all this stuff. So depending on what you try to target with your website can heavily affect what you'll actually promote as an Amazon affiliate. So make sure whatever you want to promote also lines up with the niche you're selecting. Once you do have a niche selected and you drill down into it, you certainly want to try to drill a little deeper into your product selection on Amazon to expand on that even more, because you're going to have all different sorts of things that you can really try to go after. And the point is not to try to go after everything, but it's to try to determine what people are more likely to want information about when they are searching online, and also what people are more likely to want to try to buy online as opposed to going down to a local garden center to pick up. You need to offer them some kind of advantage for doing it online as opposed to just running down to the store. Things like seeds or plants, unless they're hard to find in a local garden center, that's usually the only situation where people will go online if they're simply hard to find. Otherwise, plants and seeds are usually just going to run down to a store and buy them. But your harder to find items, your specialty items, your equipment and supplies, especially if you can save them money when they are the higher priced items, all that kind of stuff is going to be your best bet as far as product targeting within any one of these sub-niches. Now I have one of them in particular starred, and turned into red text up here, food gardening, because food gardening, as I mentioned before, is heavily on the rise. There are a lot of advantages to food gardening besides it just being a hobby. If you look at almost any other one of these possibilities, they're really not going to have a monetary benefit to them except for food gardening. Now, you do have other specialty situations. People might use greenhouses to grow certain types of plants that are collectible types of plants. Something I've actually done before and done extremely well with. But besides your specialty kinds of situations like that, your food gardening is really the one that most people are getting interested in because it offers a monetary return, or it can at least help people to save money. As I mentioned before, you can get returns as high as 1,000% on your investment on a food garden. Now, another aspect of targeting that I want to talk about are the hardiness zones. Now, this applies to the USA, but it even applies to other parts of the world. Every part of the world and every area within those countries has these different hardiness zones that describes essentially what kinds of plants can grow there. Or it might also determine when to actually begin planting certain kinds of plants. And this is especially true when it comes to food gardening. If you want a certain kind of vegetable to be able to grow, and you're planting it somewhere in the south, you can plant those things a lot earlier in the season because the temperature warms up a lot faster. However, you want to be sure to plant them as early as you possibly can because down in the southern states, your summer temperatures get really hot. And a lot of those same plants that are planted in the springtime, they might not perform well during the hot summer months. You might do a spring and a fall harvest on them. So your hardiness zones will heavily affect the information that is going to be delivered to your website readers. So consider this when you are selecting your niche. Depending on where people live, they're going to need different information for gardening. And even the plants that they grow might vary from one zone to the next. So consider whether you're going to offer information on your niche for all of the different zones, but individually, or whether you would be better off targeting a very specific zone number along with your niche. For example, you can do things like building a site that's not just about food gardening, but it could be about food gardening in Zone 8 and maybe for a very specific type of food. You could just talk about growing strawberries, or you could just talk about growing potatoes in this very specific zone. So you're going to have heavily targeted traffic. You're going to know exactly where these people live, what they are interested in, and as a result, you'll know exactly what kind of products to promote to them when you get this specific. And it even makes getting search rankings a lot easier as well. So using the zones as a targeting factor, you can easily break down basically any gardening niche into even more sub-niches. Just in the US alone, you have zones 2 through 10, so you can break any niche down into 9 more sub-niches that way. And again, you would have different information and different products that you would want to actually promote to them. And if you're advertising to attract your initial readers or fans, you can narrow your demographics down even more this way when you're targeting a specific zone. For example, if you're targeting Zone 8 here, you have a limited number of states that this zone actually runs through. You could even get another map and plop it over top of this one to figure out what major cities you have running through these various zones and try to target those cities and surrounding areas. I want to continue on by talking about the purpose of gardens. Typically, the average gardening consumer will usually have a specific reason for wanting to create a garden. And you can use this to help you attract those consumers to buy specific products relating to those purposes. And you can target those specific purposes as your sub-niche. However, you can also combine this with other targeting factors like any of the other things I've been discussing here. Now, this is certainly only a partial list, but likely your more common and more popular purposes for creating a garden. We have food gardening, obviously, like I have been discussing a number of times already. Things like plant cultivation. A lot of people, when they are interested in a certain kind of plant, especially if they just grow it as a hobby, especially in greenhouses, when they might be growing a plant that is not native to their local area, a lot of people will grow endangered species plants to help to protect the species in case it happens to go extinct in the environment, especially for environments that are being destroyed by things like logging and clearing land for farming. You have more common things like home beauty, where people just want to make a beautiful flower bed so their house looks nice for the neighbors and people that are driving by, all for appearance sake. You have relaxation, where people want to make a peaceful backyard that they can go out and relax in, enjoy a nice cookout on the weekends with their family. You have people that are wanting to observe nature. They might have certain kinds of plants and trees that will attract certain kinds of birds or insects, or plants that have major changes throughout the seasons, and people simply like being able to sit back and watch nature do its thing. You have other people that do gardening as a hobby because it's a more active hobby than a lot of the more new age hobbies these days. You know, a lot of people will spend a lot of time on the computer, or, you know, doing Facebook or watching TV or doing things that are indoors. So getting out and gardening, working with your hands and being active and doing a little bit of physical labor even can have great fitness benefits to it. So you can try to target the gardening niche from any one of these different aspects. But again, you might do best by combining one of these with another targeting factor. Now I want to mention plant species briefly, and this actually takes up 2 total slides here, because there are at least 300,000 known species of plants on the planet. And in fact, there are probably quite a few more than that. They're constantly discovering new ones all the time, thousands every single year. While you could potentially take any one of these species and make it the subject of an entire website, the ones that are going to be the best for Amazon affiliate sites will be the types of plants that consumers in the USA will consider growing, and even more so the ones that are more common or more popular. However, it can kind of be a fine line when you're targeting anything that's popular. And this is even still the case with gardening and plant species. When you're targeting a very popular species, you're going to have a lot of competition for that, because obviously there's going to be a lot of websites out there about that species if it is really popular. So combine this with another targeting factor to reduce the competition if you're going after a very popular species. If you're going after a less popular species that still has a devoted following in the plant community, you may be able to target by species alone for the more specialty kinds of purposes. But even then, you still might need to define your niche even more specifically than that to really be able to bypass a lot of the competition, or to avoid having to create a multi-hundred-page website to truly be able to cover all of the information in that niche that you select. So here are some recommended plant species that you can use for targeting. I'm not going to go through and name all of these for you because I have quite a list of different kinds. So I'll simply mention the different kinds, and you can go back through the PDF for this presentation slideshow and refer back to this list at any time that you need. So we have things like vegetables and fruits. Obviously will be in your food gardens as well as herbs. And then you have things like flowers, shrubs, and house plants. They're going to be more common planted around the house and outside, or maybe even inside as a potted plant. And then you have some specialty plants, things like orchids and carnivorous plants. Everything listed here is a species of carnivorous plant. Now, there are even more plants, again, that are still popular that are not even listed here. There are simply too many to go through. But here is another list for you at gardenguides.com/popular-plants. You can find a listing of the 100 most popular plants. Now, there's no guarantee that those are actually the 100 most popular currently in the USA. I'm sure that kind of list changes from year to year. However, this is a really good listing to go by, because pretty much anything in that list should have some kind of decent popularity to it in the USA in any given year. Now, I also want to mention related construction. Beyond gardening itself, there are a lot of related niches that you could also try to target by themselves or in combination with one of these garden niches or targeting factors that I've already been talking about this class. Consider things like outdoor construction that can enhance a gardening environment. You can easily create an extra page or a couple of pages on your gardening niche website with something relational having to do with construction, especially because these kind of things are going to have much higher price tag values associated with them. When you can get people to jump into a larger project like this, they're going to need more materials, they're going to need more expensive machinery, and things of that nature. So consider projects like fences, paths, patios, decks, sculptures, drainage systems, lights, different kinds of buildings, sheds, gazebos, pergolas, follies, etc. Any of these could be a good sub-niche on its own to try to dive into, especially if you narrow it down into a very specific topic. But again, this is also something that you could kind of combine with pretty much any gardening niche that you decide to target to add some extra relational information and also to try to promote some higher priced products along with whatever else you are targeting. I want to conclude this class by mentioning the product research, as I do at the end of each of my niche training classes. I have some of the top-selling and higher-priced gardening niche products on Amazon researched for you and provided in a spreadsheet file that comes along with this lesson. These products are sorted into 7 different categories: raised garden bed kits, mini greenhouses, broadcast spreaders, garden carts, water timers, composters, and tillers. Please keep in mind, the products included in this research are a partial list. There are a lot of different kinds of products in this industry, and obviously these categories are not going to cover all of them, but these are some of your more expensive items that are often needed to go along with gardening, whether it might be food gardening or flower gardening. However, consider the cheaper products that will fit whatever niche you're trying to target. While they will offer lower commissions, they are going to be purchased more frequently. And a lot of times you can get one person to purchase a number of different products all in one fell swoop in the gardening niche. And things like this can really help to boost up your monthly volume on Amazon, which can raise your commission rate for every sale that you make. So depending on what uses you decide to target in the gardening niche, you're likely going to need to explore Amazon for relational products that will be the best fit for your site visitors. Now, I have also included product review videos to go along with this research. There's one for each of the different categories that is part of the product research. While you won't be able to upload these to YouTube, you can upload them to your own site, or you can use my own YouTube embed code to embed it on your website directly. Or you might be able to upload them on some video hosting sites, but YouTube, again, will not be one of them. Things like dailymotion.com might be a possibility. They seem to allow duplicate videos. However, don't force the use of the products that are in the product research or in the product review videos unless they are a perfect fit for your niche. So again, this research and these review videos are intended as a jumping off point for you to help you identify some of the pricier products that will fit a lot of the different sub-niches that I have discussed so far in this class.